Welcome to The Mystery, a series of conversations on the mystery of life as ceremony with Ioana Maria Iliut of The Gentle Healing Way and Melanie Drisceoil of 𝒑𝒐𝒅𝒆. Our intention for this podcast is to bring light into dark spaces in these dark times, to sit with the tender places within us as individuals and in the collective. We're bringing our hearts together with the intention to speak into what needs to be addressed. We intend to do it as gently as possible, and along the way you can certainly expect giggles and rants and everything in between. We're striving to bring some common sense into the spirituality world, the murkiness, the confusion, the chaos of it all. And we want to bring the right questions that help promote safety so that people can find the right paths, the right teachers for themselves, and have good guides of what questions to ask when and how. This podcast is intended for people who are in the early days of their spiritual awakening, and equally other walkers on the way alike, whether you've been doing this for a few months or a few years. You are welcome here, and thank you for bringing your heart to this space. So welcome to The Mystery. Our next episode is about to begin.
Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Welcome to the Mystery, our soul podcast created by Melanie Drisceoil and Ioana Maria Iliut. We are here on an absolutely fabulous Saturday afternoon, and the sun is shining in Cobh, and it is a celebration.
𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒍𝒐𝒓𝒆. Thanks be to God. Yeah, absolutely. Sun is bright. And you have some visitors who are out roaming the lovely, bright, sunshiny coast of Cobh, which is nice.
Yes, after being rained on for the past week. Yeah. Yeah, we have an interesting topic, we feel, today. We are called to talk about how to choose a practitioner, especially for the people who are first starting off, but also generally speaking, like what are the things that define a good practitioner, what to look out for. And we're just going to go on an exploration of this between both of our experiences and what we feel is needed in the world and all of that. And then we are really looking forward to hearing your feedback about it and how, if at all, helpful it has been. So let us explore away.
Yeah. It's like a little roadmap. Even we were making our kind of few little notes for the podcast, and it doesn't really look sensical. Like there's this and this and this bit and this bit. So I know it's going to weave together. So I'm curious to see where it's going to lead us.
Yeah, I'm curious as well, because organized in a classical sense, we are not.
No. But yeah, we're going to try to talk a little bit, like you said, like from people who are coming at this from first time, but also like if you're new to a new line of work or a new lineage, or you're, you feel called to do work with a new type of way of doing the work. It's kind of like what to look out for. So maybe I will start. So I'm going to do we're going to do a little role play.
Oh yeah. Yay.
Which the little part of me that used to hate drama class is like, oh no. So I'm new. I've just had a spiritual awakening, unbeknownst to me. I don't even know it's called that yet, to be honest. I've come from a totally secular, atheist, agnostic background. I really have no clue. I've never heard of Reiki. I've never heard of medicine circles or anything like that. I don't know what any of it is, but I have this urge to find a practitioner and start doing some healing work. What would you offer me as some guidance?
Yeah, we were just laughing because we had a very funny conversation about this in the kitchen earlier what I would say, first of all, is really, really, really connect within yourself. Like, start with yourself. And I would say a prayer before you start, but if you're an agnostic or an atheist, that's probably not going to be a good idea. It's just like, I find it so funny, and because it's not an easy one to answer. And of course there are a few really good guidelines, but it's not like especially when people are called like that, like when you're called like that and you really need to do something else, or it's sometimes either like these things happen with, either a disease or a sickness or some event that happens that triggers it, or just like some people just have those strong experiences. They don't know what to do with them. So like, it would depend where you're coming from, dear Mel. But most of the time I'd say start with yourself. Mm-hmm. Start with really connecting within your own body, and like just in the wisdom and in the yeses and the nos of your bodies, to see, because like for every person, like those yeses and those nos are very different. Mm-hmm. Like most of the time it will be something along the lines of, when a yes feels in the body like a relaxing feeling, like something where you ease up and you relax and you breathe out, exactly. And then a no most of the times will feel like a tension or a tightening. But these things are very different for different people in different parts of the body. And so you know me, I always shy away from exact recipes that would work for everybody, because I just don't believe in them. But so I would say, just start with your body, start with your yeses, start with your nos, and then with that, take it from there.
Yeah. When you say that to me, I'm aware of myself and other people around me, where a lot of my yeses and nos can be conditioned based on what I'm expected to say, or what I think I should say, or what I think a yes or a no should be. And it isn't necessarily what is actually true in my body. And it's certainly taken me a lot of work to get to a place in myself where I actually really can feel, sense and know my yeses and my nos. And that for me has looked like engaging with things like consent workshops and practicing like nonviolent communication with friends and partners, and kind of like learning through a lot of trial and error. And I know that like in the spiritual world, and obviously, you've mentioned in some of our past episodes that you work with people who've experienced like spiritual abuse or any type of strong trauma in people's lives, can sometimes be like, like it distracts us from what actually is true in our body. So sometimes maybe that's the first thing someone is encountering if they've had this, and you're saying, okay, well, start with your own body. Sometimes we can be in a place where we tune in with our own body and actually we don't know. Like we feel we're getting so many different impulses and different senses, or different things being triggered, or stuff being overwhelmed, or being in this place of chronic stress, or with a lot of cortisol going through our system, it can be harder to feel that. Certainly I can speak for myself, but that for me it's often when I feel relaxed that I can most say my yes and my no. So it's taken a while to get there.
Like what I wanted to say, and this is why it's so hard, was that like to tune in with our bodies, in the sense of finding the right place to teach us how to tune in with our bodies. And that's the thing, that's why it's actually quite a hard question to answer, because some people's journey to their own yeses and to their own nos is going to be through body practices. Other people's ways are going to take them through therapy. Other people's ways are going to take them through deep trauma work. Like, so there are so many ways to get there. So like, if somebody were to come to me and say, okay, look, this is what happened. Like, I've had this experience and I have no idea what to do. I have no idea what's going on with my life. Help. Then I would just, basically sit them down and say, okay, look, tell me about you, and see where they're coming from and how because you're absolutely right. And especially for people who come from traumatic backgrounds, or from basically having their yeses and their no's bypassed an entire childhood or even later in life, like that's a really hard thing to go back to the healthy yeses and to the healthy no's. And, this is like the chicken and the egg dilemma, because it's important to have a good practitioner to start to guide you to your own yeses and no's. And then it's important to have a good yes and no to find the right practitioner. Yeah. So, like you were saying, it is many times a matter of trial and error. And what we are trying to explore today is how we can do this in the safest possible way. Yeah. And then, we're definitely going to be exploring in different episodes what we do when things go wrong. Like how to get back to ourselves when things go wrong. But this is the, the age-old dilemma. How do you get to the right practitioner without your yeses and your no's? And how do you use your yeses and no's to find your right practitioner? Yeah. So, we'll explore it. Yeah. We'll definitely be exploring it.
Something as you're speaking that just kind of opened for me there, like a little door, is that you sit them down and you have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly something I've done as well. And with people or places where I've trained or gone for help, that's been like a first step in a lot of ways, is have a conversation, rather than, no, you have to pay me first and then we'll talk about things. But that there's actually a space where, before there's any commitment made, there's room to sit and just actually meet person to person. Yes. There's this quote by Carl Jung, which I think is lovely. He says, like, learn all the different techniques and practices and principles, but put them to the side when you meet and see the beauty of a human soul. That there has to be that space where actually, okay, maybe you're going to a practitioner who's had a certain level of training or has trained in something that you think might help. But there has to be room where that person can go, yeah, I do that work. And in this moment, I can meet you just person to person and talk like openly and honestly about whether I think I can actually help and support you. Or if I think there's someone else who could help or support you. Or if, there's some kind of guidance. And I've heard that from other people who would be people that are like well-known practitioners that are very open of having that first conversation and being able to really honestly say, yes or no, because that's another aspect of that, is someone else's yes or no. Like if a practitioner is going to work with you, it has to be a yes for them. And I guess where it can get messy is if people are saying yes just for money, because I need money, and yes, I'm going to work with you because you're going to pay me. But actually someone who can put that to the side and be humble enough to really sit and say, actually, I think what you're looking for is a trauma-informed therapist, or maybe do some breath work, or this is exactly it, because it needs to be a right fit. It needs to be a good fit both for you and for the person. Otherwise, you're wasting their time, their money, their energy, and your time, your money, your energy, because it's going to be like, if it's not a good fit for both practitioner and the person who is coming, then it is basically not going to work for either of them. It's going to take a lot of work from the practitioner, and then it's going to build up probably a lot of frustration in the person, and they're going to probably even go home saying, oh yeah, I didn't do enough again, which would probably add to their trauma. So that's why it's really important to have that conversation. And since this episode is about practitioners, like, this is one of the things that's really good to keep an eye out on, how open practitioners are to referring people to other people. Like, many times I will refer people to a trauma therapist, like to a therapist who specializes in trauma, or to people who do somatic experiencing. There are a good few herbalists that I really trust and appreciate that are good. There are good body workers, like yoga teachers, or movement medicine people that
work in a good way. Like, there are so many ways to explore this, and for every person it's going to be different, because a person will come and their healthy entry way into a good, healthy spiritual practice or path or awakening or whatever we want to call it might be through the body. Like, their way might be sometimes as simple as go swimming in the ocean, and for other people it might take yoga, or it might take a certain kind of practice or meditation or herbal medicine. For some people it just works. So many times when I talk to a person and if I get a strong sense about that, or because in the conversation that will come up, because you can ask them, okay, so what usually works for you? Like, how do you respond? And you get a sense, and then it's really important. And I think it's the most honest way to say, look, like, would you be open to giving this a try? And then maybe later, if you still feel called, just come back. And see how that has worked for you. Because I don't know, like, that's really honest. Like, you need to be able to have those conversations and to see, look, am I the right person for you? Are you also willing? Because like, when we work together, this and this and this can happen, and this is what you can expect. And are you okay with that? Like, are you willing to take that, to make that commitment? Even if it's just for one session. It's still a commitment, and you're still opening a door to healing if you know what you're doing. And then that will in turn open other doors, and then that's where our responsibility as practitioners lie to. And of course this comes with experience, but to see as best as we can, okay, how does it feel? What would the best? Because it's not about it's not about me. It's not about my money. It's not about getting more clients. It's about what does this person, what would be the best thing for this person.
And I think in the way the world is now, the more modern world with Instagram and all these kind of coaches and mentors and people looking for clients or talking about getting clients, and people who, I think in a big way there's been this big revival where there actually is finally enough sensitivity in the world that a lot of the trauma that's there can actually really be worked with at a bigger scale. And so in response to that, we are seeing a lot more practitioners and mentors and people kind of coming to the fore that maybe were more quietly in the background before, or more people have had access to this information. We're in this wave of consciousness that is kind of like rippling through us as a collective. So there is this increase anyway, which I think is like a natural symptom of the collective time we're in. But then there can be that aspect that's, I think really forced actually on practitioners around getting clients and making money and making sure that your needs are met, which are all really important. But for me, the way I approach that is that ultimately all I can do is be as honest as I can with the person coming to me about whether I think I'm a good fit for them or not, whether, like you said, laying out what maybe the work might entail or what it might look like or what that kind of commitment is and what's expected of them in that space, and letting it go back to them to make their decision, and also recommending people. Like I've had with clients where they've asked to work with me, I haven't been available to work with them at that time, and I said, but there's other people I really recommend, and if you want to wait, that's okay too. And people have sometimes went and gone with other people, and sometimes they've actually waited to work with me. And in those scenarios, what I can see is that in me and in my client, there is like a trust in God, in Creator, that like there's a wider intelligence helping us with all these decisions as well. And if someone is meant to work with you, they will find their way to you. Most of my clients have been magically, weirdly, through the ether, like gotten to me. It's not been some Instagram post or something that's like gotten someone to come to me. Like there's a deeper trusting in the intelligence of life that we're guided to people at certain times. And I guess being open to that as well is part of how we meet each other. And I had other thoughts based on what you said, but I'll leave it there for a minute and clear my throat.
The joys.
Yeah.
The joys. Yeah, no, it is like there's a lot to what you've said. Like this particular thing about this greater intelligence weaving everything in its time and not in our time, which can sometimes really mess with the realities of this world.
Yeah.
And that is, yeah, I hear you completely. And then it's also like, it's something that for myself is really important to be able to trust that. To be able to trust that the right people will find. And of course, on my end, like I'm trying to do the best as I can according to what I feel right or not right to be there. And this has been a journey, because you were saying how a lot of practitioners are coming from the woodworks. Like I was very, very, very private for many years, and I still am to a certain degree, because I just don't know sometimes how to say, oh, I do this and that, because I don't do anything. I've just cleared the channel, and I'm just continuously working and trying to do my best, basically.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, of course, there are, so many years of experience behind it. At the same time, I'm like, I don't do this. So it's been this struggle of putting myself out there, and then at the same time going like, yeah, but I don't do it.
I so hear you. And I feel like actually some of the best people I've worked with are the people that don't have the fancy websites, don't have all the bits set up, like aren't really that skilled in that dimension, because their focus is on other things, and there is a lot to be said for like good marketing, like a good web page or a good Instagram can really set the tone that already a few people that might definitely really feel drawn to your work can find you more easily, and also people that are a bit like, that's not for me, actually can also kind of, maybe you have a bit less of those free phone calls of like figuring out what things are going on, because some people will already be able to say no to you before they even come to your Instagram or your online page, which is helpful on all sides. And it's part of how I guess technology can help in this realm. It also can help with that, like sending out the transmitter, the frequency of whatever each person's individual medicine is. Those online spaces can be like a beacon that can kind of spread it, like this podcast is an example of that, and it can be helpful, certainly for me, to be able to tune into a podcast interview with a practitioner that I'm considering working with, or hearing someone on a podcast, or seeing their Instagram or their writing and kind of seeing their consistency and how they show up at those things. Sometimes for me is like, oh, actually it can give me more space to feel into my yes or no around someone through their writing, through their voice, through the way they present themselves or the way they show up online, which is only one dimension,
Yes.
But then so much more of that is actually meeting someone like physically or like on a call, but actually really meeting them with what you're bringing and having that space of like conversation. And something I think is really helpful in what you said, tracking back a bit earlier, is like, and we had a chat with Emily earlier as well, who was speaking to the importance of like practitioners that know their remit, and that what you're saying in your conversations is something I would find myself doing, and know other practitioners who would do similar, is offering an outline of what the work entails, or why it's important to commit to something, or what kind of requirements will be asked of you to be in a space like that, things like having a commitment to your own practice or your own self-responsibility, like, because obviously this work is the mystery, and it's welcome to the mystery, and ultimately no one can know what's going to happen inside a healing space, because that's part of the mystery of what unfolds with grace. But a practitioner who's been doing what they're doing for a while will know certain kind of threads of energy and certain potential outcomes or ways that things can go. And a good practitioner, I think, will guide you in that, or kind of help lay out a little bit of what that might look like, and how you as a client can best engage with that space as well to get the most from it. That is kind of not necessarily obvious, but is made apparent enough that you can actually feel into what you're getting into, what type of like time frame commitment, financial commitment, that there's nothing secret, or like someone works with someone for an hour and they go over by an hour and they say, oh, but you actually owe me now for 2 hours or something like that. You know, like that's, like so not okay. Like those things need to be made out clearly before the session starts, and those requirements can hold through and be this kind of crystal clear structure that will ebb and flow as humans do. But I think a good practitioner can give you that clarity to a degree of what to expect, even though it's mysterious. And for me, that's a huge part of knowing if I can say yes or no to someone, rather than someone asking for blind faith.
Yes, absolutely. Like that's also a thing, you know, with asking for blind faith. And then, you know, speaking of red flags in practitioners, it's when sometimes somebody will say, oh no, I'll fix that. I will fix you. I instantly go, and I get sick at that, just at the mere thought of that. Because first of all, no, you don't. No, you won't. And then second of all, we don't know. Sometimes but yes, it's important to be very clear about what a session entails, more or less what they can expect. And many times, like, look, I've been doing this for so many years now, and still to this day, when somebody asks me, what are we going to do in a session? I'm like, well, we're going to possibly do this or this or this or this, and we're going to have a long chat, and then we're possibly going to do this, and then we'll see. And then it's going to be according to your needs, because I don't know, like when somebody makes and even if, like, I've had this experience so many times when somebody was coming, oh, I want to work on this and this and this and this, and then we ended up going into a session and we worked on something completely different. And then, like, that probably could have possibly been the root cause of everything that they wanted to work on, but like it turned out to be something completely different. And so I need to be honest about that and go, look, we're going to go wherever the session takes us, and we're going to do what we need to do. And I find it very weird, like this whole thing with charging by the hour, because then you tend, you know, like if you do this for the money, then you're gonna want to drag it out so that you drag more. I can't. At the same time, it's important that, like, for example, if you spend 3 hours with the person, that, you know, that's basically pretty much half your day. Because if you do this work in that way, then it's gonna, take a little bit of, not your energy, that's a different story for a different podcast episode, but it's going to,
it takes a lot.
It's gonna take a little bit of something. And then it needs to be fair, and the fairness needs to be, you know, explained from the get-go. This is what can happen, this is what might not happen. Please don't come with these expectations, and then, you know, this is what can be done, possibly. You know, and just that pure honesty, because there is so much going on now in the world with so many practitioners who really do this for the money and for the fame and for the wrong reasons, instead of doing it for the people. You know, and just being in service and just doing it for the people. Because if you don't do it for the people, then just don't. You know, just don't, because there are so many other jobs and careers out there. Like,
you had a lovely realization the other day. You were doing another interview in Romanian, I believe. And someone was asking you about practitioners and what to look out for, and you had this big, lovely opening into something that I think is very beautiful. Do you want to share?
Yes. It was such a beautiful, powerful moment. And this beautiful woman from a local TV station in Romania was interviewing me, and we were talking about ceremonies and practitioners and all of this. And it was like we had like 1 minute left of the show, and she was like, "Okay, so to sum it up," and then I just had this big wave of, I just call it like a wave of truth, you know, when those things come that you feel in every cell of your body, and it was so strong, and it just completely came over me, and the words were like this. It was like, they have to love people. They have to love human beings. They have to love people. If a practitioner doesn't genuinely love people, don't go to them. And it was such a powerful moment, because I got the shivers and she got the shivers, and we both instantly teared up, and it was such a powerful moment of truth. And aside from, like, if we were to leave all the other criteria aside, I would say this would have to be the starting point. If a practitioner gives you the feeling that they love people, then it's probably a good start. It still makes me emotional to think about that.
I can feel it too.
One of those moments, you know, where you grow silent, and I felt so small in the face of a big truth kind of a thing. And also because I've met so many amazing practitioners in my life who really love people. And it's in the work and outside the work. That's the thing. Because that's another thing, you know, when there is this huge separation between the persona that somebody has when they're the healer, and then how they are in their real life, in their social interactions, in their environment, in their home, in their, you know, home life, in their, like, how congruent is their talk to their walk? You know, how are, like, do they love people? You know, or do they just not care? Because if they don't care outside of the work, then it's a bit complicated. That being said, there are also the notable exceptions of people who, when they work, they are absolutely in service and 100% love people, and then in themselves and in their lives they're complete recluses. And they are complete introverts, and they don't want to be around people, and that doesn't mean that they don't love people. So that is the big, you know, because I have brothers and sisters who are like that, who are amazing ceremony workers, like completely safe and 100% amazing human beings. And when they're out of, you know, like when the work day is done, they just want to be indoors or in the woods or by the ocean and maybe read a book or maybe watch Netflix or whatever else, but just be by themselves, because they're naturally introverts. And sometimes introverts can be amazing at this work, because they will notice a lot of details that sometimes an extrovert won't, and they have a completely different view of the world. So that is a very big, very important, very notable exception. But you'll see that when it matters, those people will be there. Even if they're introverts. Like when it matters, they'll have your back. And kind of, because this has been my experience with a good few beautiful, beautiful brothers and sisters, and when it mattered, I was so pleasantly surprised at how much they were willing to kind of like give of themselves and their own comfort to be there. In a personal, private situation where they had no responsibility, where nothing was asked of them, where, you know, but they were there. And
beautiful. when you shared that with me first, like about they have to love people, I was kind of like, I was just reflecting on my own journey with that, and I was like, when I was a kid, I actually used to say I hated people. Mm-hmm. And I felt more connected with animals or plants or anything else. And it's been actually through this work, through my own work and through doing this work more, that I've been on this journey of really falling in love with people and the beauty of the human soul. Because whatever way I was living kind of outside any sense of the sacred, where everything is just kind of material stuff, and obviously seeing the way the world is and how much destruction and greed, and I used to think, God, humans ruin everything, like, you know, I wish I was an animal. But through this work, it's been for me this spiraling back to my body, the wisdom of my body as a woman, especially seeing that wisdom of other women has been extraordinary. But every being, like that absolute infinity that exists in people, and like how it's just like every time I work with someone or I sit in a ceremony, I'm just left actually in awe of like, wow, you know, and of people's courage to go into places and sit with things that are really challenging and really big things, whether it's in their own life, in their body, in their family system, in a collective sense, like the bravery, the courage, that willingness to live with heart, that definitely is for me, every time I experience it, another falling in love more and more with people and with like the human condition, with all of its... Yeah, I hear you. I was the same when I was growing up. Like when I was very young, I was just like, oh, we're ruining it. And then later in life, and maybe doing this work and meeting really, really good healers or human beings. I'll just call them human beings. Meeting really good human beings, I realized that it wasn't that I didn't like people. I didn't like the things people did who were operating out of, I don't know, hurt, wounding, trauma, whatever you want to call it, or some just because they could. There are some people who just do bad things just because they can. And of course there is, you know, a lot to it, and it has 40,000 different layers, but you know, there is that in the world as well, no matter how much love and light we throw at it. And so that was my experience as well. And then I kind of just was around a lot of people who were so much in service to the people, where I just looked and saw and just observed things and went, oh my God, okay, so that's how it has to feel. So I kind of just guided my own little spidey senses around, okay, how close am I to that, but in a genuine way, not in the sense of, oh, I'm just gonna imitate them or do what they do or say what they... No, it has nothing to do with it. It's just like this genuine feeling, because I've met so many beautiful people who, when they work with people, or when they're just there, they open their hearts, and there is so much love that pours out of them that it just completely engulfs you, and it makes you remember your love and what you carry, and that part of God that each of us carry within ourselves, you know. And so I was always, especially in my first few years, but also now, like it hasn't changed really. I'm just completely absorbing or just observing how some people can love human beings so much that they just pour love, and then that love then comes in the human and in the person who comes to them and who's around them, and it'll instantly remind them of their own divinity within, and then that will in turn kind of induce the process of healing. And it's prayers, it's techniques, it's ceremony, it's a lot of things. And
it's love.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been quite a journey in observing that. So I then realized that I actually didn't not like people. I actually just didn't like a whole bunch of things that weren't just not according to how I felt the world would be healthier.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way.
It's beautiful listening to you share, because as you share about that experience, it's what's actually happening, because you have these like tears of love leaking out your eyes. And I have this really big smile of listening to you and feeling that warmth in my heart. So I feel like what you're talking about is actually happening right now, which is really beautiful. It's really special.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can feel your love. Like, and that beautifully how you said, it's like there's this experience of the transmission of an awakened heart to another awakened heart to another awakened heart. And it's that legacy of love that exists among people. And like you said, there can be like a felt presence of it in a space, and it might be around a particular person who's like the organizer or the one facilitating or making things happen. But it's like through everyone, and it becomes this like communal heart. And when I'm saying this, I'm thinking of the countless days that we've spent like around your kitchen island having cups of tea and sharing food and talking, or in a yurt after a ceremony and sharing food and chatting. Sharing food is a good sign that people are good, I think, a lot of the time. If people are freely bringing delicious food and encouraging you to eat it, that's a green flag in my book.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Do they have food?
They have food, yeah.
Like, and that, like, you know, you were saying earlier about how congruent are people in their lives. I think some people are so boundaried that you can't actually see their life, or you can't, because they're not welcoming you into it, which obviously, if people are working with lots and lots of people, they can't welcome everybody in all the time. You know, there has to be certain boundaries. But what I can see in your work, and I try to do this too in other communities that I've been part of, this kind of like, where is there almost like just a free offering, that it's like, it's not about money, it's not about doing the healing work, it's like just the gathering of people, of just having space where people can come and either share food or pray or go be in nature together or whatever. But where are there spaces where people are actually able to like meet beyond the like healing space, you know, as just people, because that's really important.
Yeah, it is. And this is also, again, it's also different with every practitioner. Yeah. Because if you're an introvert and if you've worked 10 hours with people a day, you're not going to want to do that in your free time. Yeah. You know, like, there is, for me, you know, I have that open door kettle boiling. There is some food in the fridge policy in my house. It's also not for everybody. Like, I can be quite selective with the people who come into my home. Yeah. Like in that way, in the sense that, it's just, it needs to feel right. Yeah. It needs to feel nourishing. Yeah. And I don't want to be in a position where I, you know, feel obligated to accommodate everybody non-stop. Yeah. And at the same time, I absolutely love feeding people. I love community gatherings. I love creating those spaces. But it's because that's just how I am. I love my house full, and I love to have laughter in my house and just people chatting. And even like, you know, how we organize the community get-togethers, like, you'll normally see me someplace in the kitchen watching the whole thing, because I just get a lot of, I don't have that thing, I think, anymore of, like, I don't need to be the heart of the party, or I don't need to be an entertainer. I'm just like, I really love having that energy and joy and people communicating and talking and laughing and eating and drinking tea and all of that. And I'm actually just really happy just watching it and joining in one conversation here and joining in one because I'm I always joke that I'm I'm an extroverted introvert, actually.
I got that too, yeah.
I'm kind of an introvert in disguise.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm pretending to be an extrovert. I'm genuinely an extrovert. And I have a lot of introverted tendencies.
Yeah.
So
I feel that too. And I can see in just, I can see we have a similar sense of it. Like, I would be like that too. Love my house being full. Happy to be on the edge. Love being in the kitchen, doing the food preparing and serving tea and making sure people have what they need. Don't necessarily have to be in the middle of all the conversations, but love the facilitating of them. But I'd love to hear, and maybe people who are listening can share a little bit more of like practitioners who are maybe less like us, who don't have that, like, kind of have a lot of people in the home policy, like, how are ways you can tell people are being congruent in their lives if you can't actually see the rest of their lives? Or maybe you don't, maybe there's other felt senses, but...
I mean, we live in a day and age of first of all, social media. Yeah. Where you can tell a little bit, and I'm not talking about the fancy, cute, always perfect pictures that people post on Instagram or platforms. I mean, and also, like, if you're local, you'll see them around in town. Right?
That's true.
You'll see them around in town. You'll see how they interact with their family, with their kids, with their partners, with somebody else. You'll see if they say hi to you on the street, or if they just grunt and turn away. Yeah. Or if they pretend they don't see you. Or, like, there are a lot of ways to... And then... Again, maybe they're in a very introverted space and they don't want to be interacting with people from work like that. That's why, like, the grey zones are so
I got that fast. Sometimes. Yeah, it's like, I'm actually really tired today. Being outside is really hard. And other days I feel much more open. But something you mentioned earlier around that is in Indigenous communities, how there's like the community centre or the community council where you can actually call and ask about people and kind of find out from the village centre kind of about people. Or like I asked for you, I said, who could I ask about you? And you gave me a list of a bunch of people. So I guess there's that kind of sense of referrals, other people, other clients that have worked with someone, other practitioners that maybe know them, who their teacher is, people who practice that can kind of vouch for them. And I think you shared earlier, and I would agree, that like any good practitioner should be open to that.
Yes, yes. Like I really believe that in a way that there is a way of accountability for it. And this was what you were talking about, and we were talking about earlier, is, for example, because there are a lot of people who are traveling from abroad, and then they come from different cultures, they come from different communities, and they come from different, people and tribes and continents, and, so it's very different. So, like, for example, in Native American communities, like, you can basically call the tribe and ask about a particular tribal member, and ask if they're actually enrolled in that particular tribe, or, if somebody knows them, because somebody in the tribal office will know somebody who knows them, or something like that, and they can tell you, oh yeah, no, that just stay away, or oh yeah, no, he's a tribal member from here, and da-da-da. So it's important to be able to have some sort of reference, because just because somebody looks like they're a cool healer doesn't mean that they're actually the real thing. Like, I can put 40,000 feathers in my hair and make myself look like, I'll get a beautiful cool cloak, and it'll let it have a beautiful hood, and all these gorgeous details, and then I'll look like somebody out of a fairy tale. And I basically just quit my corporation job 3 months ago, and I had a spiritual awakening, and now I'm a healer, but I have really cool clothes. So and then of course, sometimes the shiny things are pretty. Like, I like shiny things, right? I like pretty clothes, and I like, beautiful jewelry and belts and all of that. I really love that. And there needs to be a bit more accountability. And that's why when you asked me, I was like, oh yeah, sure. So you can call, and then you were like, wait, no, I meant to just, I was like, no. I actually, I like people who want to call me or write me and ask where I learned or how, like, I'm completely open about my journey and about the things that I would have learned from physical teachers and the rest, and then all of it. So it's really, I find it really important to have a certain degree of references.
Yeah.
Not the sense of the ones you put on the website and they're like, oh my God, my work with Ioana has been life-changing. And those are amazing as well. I should probably post more of those or ask for those in the first place. But, I mean, the ones from kind of like your peers.
Yeah.
In the sense of, yeah, no, like that person is a good worker. Like I will vouch for certain people that I know are good and they're clean. They have a good code of ethics and they love people.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really important that we learn how to discern that. I guess discernment is a big thing where we're like, yeah, look, so how did you learn about the ceremony? And again, not with the attitude, because we were talking earlier about starting a witch hunt. Oh no, but where'd you learn from it? Not with that particular attitude, but a good practitioner should, for all intents and purposes, be able to say, oh yeah, I learned this from there, and this has been my journey so far with this and this, and not get completely defensive.
Yeah.
About
that's a good one. You said that, like, if you were to ask someone where they learned and observe how they react when you ask them, like, are they open to answering that easily and sharing their story, or do they get defensive and get shut down? Like, that's a good tell as well. And something on that kind of thread that we mentioned earlier to talk about is this sense of, like, certificates and trainings where you can get a cert that makes you insurable or whatever, and that's a route. And in this modern world where we have this kind of jigsaw of lineages and practices, because, like, particularly in Ireland, because we have this ancient old culture beneath us that's been forgotten in lots of ways, but is still there. It's in the land, it's in the monuments, it's in the plants, the trees, the stones. It's in there in our relationship with the land. But it's something we're, like, re-remembering because we've had so many years of colonization and then modernization that has disconnected that. It's like a bit like you named earlier, that, like, a trauma survivor can be totally disconnected from their body. Similarly, in Ireland, we've been totally disconnected from the land. And I would argue, actually, a lot of European countries, some more than others, but for a lot, that force of modernization has really disassociated us from our old teachings. So in lots of ways, and I can see some people who are doing really good work of learning and studying these old traditions from, say, Hindu practices, yogic traditions. The people are doing a lot of, like, connecting up with old Irish and Sanskrit and how connected they are. There's this kind of, like, work in progress of piecing things back together to find our way, not necessarily back to what was there before, but remembering a way that is authentically of this land. Because I think any good spiritual practice, and something that I would suggest as well with looking for a good practitioner, is how they work with the land, how they treat the land, how they work with plants or not. Are they asking you to buy a load of plastic shit to put on an altar to make it look a certain way? Or are they able to just work with what's actually available? The shells from the beach where you walk every day, leaves from the trees that you sit under when you have your morning coffee, whatever, like, are you actually working with what's in your landscape and is actually of the place you are? Or is it a practice that's trying to almost like a cookie cutter of what exists in some rural Indian village? It's like, we can absolutely learn techniques from them, but it's going to need to be adapted. And we're in this place of adapting lots of things right now. And in that, there's these certs and different ways and different paths. And it's a bit, messy.
Yeah. And that adaptation, that's for me, that's very important, that it's done right, without like cultural appropriation, but rather cultural appreciation, and with a deep knowledge of what that is. Like one of the examples that and it's been a big part of my journey, especially in the last few years, like, because one of my main spiritual homes is on Turtle Island and in Native American ceremonies, and because they're just such a hugely important part of my life, I would have been used to use a lot of the medicines that come from there, and not necessarily the white sage, that one as well, like the California sage, but also the sage that the prairie sage and the sage from South Dakota, that's actually from the mugwort family. It's beautiful. Part of the Artemisia family. Lovely. And in the past few years, even though that has been my main, like home, if you will, in the past few years, more and more, I find myself switching to the smudge, to the incense of the land where I'm at. Like, I'd normally go to Romania in summer and I'd collect mugwort. Like, we have mugwort growing everywhere in Romania, so it's extremely easy to collect it. In Romania, we would use a lot of wormwood as well for smudging and for sacred purposes. And there are a lot, like, I'm just now really deepening that particular connection into the land and into the local herbs and how they work and how they, and of course I will still burn the occasional sweet grass that I was gifted, or the sage that I got brought with me from home. I really wanted to say home and I said it. And the cedar, and like there are very few things to me that give me that sense of home, like the sense of cedar that is burnt. It's just something, when you live through it in ceremony that way, it'll just be home, and it'll be that instant connection. And at the same time, I find that very important to kind of bring back our local medicines and starting to work with them. And that being said, it's important the space we do it out of. Not, okay, now we're going to reclaim all our heritage, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to take that plant. And it's not, that's not the place. But rather, through a connection. And for me, that was the story of mine, and I can relate to this, how the journey has taken me really far away from my home to come back as much as possible into my own home. That means into my body, and that inner knowing and sense of connection with my ancestors and with the land I come from. And at the same time, I live here in Ireland, and this is a completely different culture and a completely different energy, and rooting into the ancestors here and working with the land here and just listening to her has been a journey in itself, So you're right when you say rooting in and bringing back the pieces of the puzzle. And when we do that, it's really important that we see how we do that, because it's not going to be, because otherwise we can slip into that thing where we can imitate something, and then it loses its depth. If it loses its depth, it loses the connection to the land. If it doesn't have a proper connection to the land and to Creator, then it's just emotions, like we said in the other episode. So that's kind of where I'm at with this particular thing.
I've been having my own journey with that, with I guess letting Christianity help lead me back to some older practices and older ways that are there. And I know there can be one view of Christianity that it's been it has been what has disassociated us, which in lots of ways it has been. And in other ways I can see and I can actually feel in the traditions the way that it actually kind of almost collaborated and danced with and had a baby with the old ways and had a little new thing that came from it. And that there are some of these older Irish, especially Irish, like my partner and I would talk about how when you say 𝒒𝒆, which is Irish is Irish for Jesus, that has a much older ancient quality than Jesus or even Yeshua. And I like Yeshua too, but it's like 𝒒𝒆 has something different and it's specific to Irish. Or like even the Irish way of saying hello is like, you know, 𝒕𝒉𝒂𝒕, like God be with you. Like there's these little roots that bring us back to something, which I'm really enjoying as a practice. And also just reclaiming like my 𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒍𝒐𝒓𝒆, like my few words in Irish. But it's like a slow process. And I guess coming back to like something that I just mentioned there is that sense of like, you know, certificates and trainings and stuff. And I've had experiences of a couple of different ones. Some like that I actually like kind of laugh at now of going, I can't believe I paid money to get a cert in that. Like, you know, some of these kind of, for me anyway, these like energy attunements and things like that you go for like a day and get attuned to a certain energy, which yes, there's merit in, but I found in my own practice actually being true to more the energy that comes to me through God, through prayer, through my own practice, through the land. That actually is my most powerful tool when I'm in ceremony with people, because it's what it's my attunement, you know. Yes, I can go and get a Reiki attunement or a Rahani attunement from somebody else and connect in with this other lineage. But actually what I started to see in that is how much actually there's our own attunement in our own practice. And then equally, like I've also done like a 2-year training in my ministry training, which was like really in-depth, deep biography healing, really understanding deeper about the energetics of ceremony. And it's rooted in you know, things like supervision and a wider community ethics that we're held to as ministers. And I found a lot of nourishment in that, because in some ways for me it felt a bit like some of what you've received from Indigenous people, that I haven't had that privilege to go and sit with them. I also don't necessarily, I mean, I don't know, but so far it hasn't been my path, and maybe it won't be my path. And it's not appropriate either that everybody goes to the Native Americans and say, oh, teach us your ways. Like, I mean, ouch. No. You know, that's not what we're doing. So that was a really good training that I've done. But it's been a mix of this cert and that cert, and then also my own just experiential learning. So like I guess it goes back to that question of you were saying to ask a practitioner, where have you learned? I would imagine most modern day practitioners are going to have a variety of places and a variety of things, because
and that's
the world we're in. Yeah,
and that's okay. No, it's perfectly okay that it is that way, and that it would be good if that would be a gateway to their own connection, into the land and to themselves. Like I actually did a training. I actually did a proper training in, you know, like the Michael Harner type Foundation for Shamanic Studies, shamanic practitioner training, 15 years ago or something like that. And the story of how that was, and this goes to tell of how I felt about certificates even back then. Like I got, you know, I did the whole year training and whatnot, and we got the diploma and all of that. And I was like, I'm just going to wrinkle this. So I gave it to another participant. I said, just stick it in your drum and I'll get it back to you at some point, from you at some point. It's been 15 years. I have not seen the woman since. And I've never missed it one day in my life. You know, the certificate. And it's a really funny story, because I remember going like, oh yeah, this is a piece of paper and it says nothing about who I am and how I work. And one of the things that really, it just came to me a couple of years ago, a part of that shamanic training was they were teaching us to work with the feather, to work with the person and tune into the energy field, and how you work with the feather and how you smudge, and also how you can detect little glitches in the field, or whatever you want to call them, with the help of a feather. And I did the training, and I could feel it back then, and it's actually taken me 12 years to start understanding how that particular medicine works. Because what we were taught was basically going through the motions. You do this, and then if this happens, this and this. But there's so much. There's an entire universe to it. And so, and I'm not a slow learner. I'm really not. So I've been, life has brought me into situations where I had to learn fast and a lot, and to just learn while doing. I always joke that life just threw me in certain things and said swim or sink, whatever, and most of the times I swim. But it took such a long time to basically just integrate that one tiny simple thing. And the joke about it is that today I hardly ever work with feathers anymore. And I'm like, are you serious? Are you joking me? But because I distinctly had that flash a year or so ago on how we learn how to do that. And how, even though I learned it, even though it worked, and even though it did the job, and even though it did the trick, I knew absolutely nothing. And it took such a long time to actually feel into and deepen the connection with that particular medicine. So when I see one of those visit cards with 40,000 qualifications on them, I don't it'll take me the rest of this life to understand 1% of what this thing is. Hopefully I'll get to 1%. I'll die happy if I get to 1%, and to understand the little subtleties and the work, and to deepen into how it works, and how the energy works, and how you can, not you, but how it can be worked with, and all of that. And it's not something you, like the certificates and the schools, they're like the gateway. They can open a door, but then
the work begins.
Then the work begins, and then the real work begins, and then the work will deepen as much as you will deepen into the work, and as much as you'll deepen into your own healing and into your own journey, and see how much you're willing to go there, and how much are you willing to give up and receive, because it goes both ways. But this is just one example that I have about certificates and trainings.
It's good. And I certainly have that feeling of okay, I've done a 2-year training where I've learned some good principles and some good frameworks, and things that are helpful, and I had a beautiful opportunity to sit with a lot of my own stuff to kind of help it be less triggered, if I'm sitting with someone who has a similar issue, that I can hold my capacity more, which is really important. But it's it's only just begun. But something I can see in that, and even in my own draw before to get the certificate, or pay to do the training and get the piece of paper, is kind of like a self-esteem thing. And I guess because, not always, but I think a lot of people who end up with a lot of those certs and qualifications are women. And a lot of the time almost don't, or haven't really actualized their ability in a lot of those things, or do bits of work, but it's always on the side, and they never really fully jump in. And I think especially with women, and certainly with myself, there's there's a self-esteem aspect that can hold people back or feel like they need this external validation to be like, no, it's okay, you are good at this, you are following this medicine, and here's your kind of validation of that. Or in my case, I could see how I could really rely on instruments, and that I felt like if I was working with someone, these are my tools and they were really helpful and I needed to work with them. And something I've been developing in my own practice over the last few years is like letting go of those. Like, how naked can I be? I used to use oracle cards. I don't anymore, because I'm like, they're just signposts or a kind of a way in to what's already there. And actually what I'm learning to do a lot more is like be naked in my practitioner-ness, like bare bones. I'm not really promising any modality or a certain technique, but what I'm offering is to meet soul to soul and sit with a piece of work, and the client will know what they're bringing and what that piece of work is, and I will do my best to hold that with them, just be like a witnessing presence, but also a co-creator in that healing experience. Like there's something in, maybe it's more old school counseling theories and stuff, where it's like the practitioner is almost like vanishes and doesn't exist. It's like they're not even a person, because it's all just about the client. But actually what I think is that when you're working with a client, or when I'm working with a client, it is the unique medicine of the client. It's the unique medicine of me and God holding us that creates whatever is going to flow in that space, because it's relational. It's between the two of us. It's not like a vacuum. Nothing can be in a vacuum. So even though I'm not bringing my stuff, I'm aware that my stuff is there, and that I'm like a co-creator in that process with the person. It's not like, oh, I'm just sitting there like a neutral blank screen, they're processing at me and that's that. It's like, how do I still be authentic to myself in a space, even if I'm not necessarily sharing or processing my stuff, but how do I actually stay true, that I can be honest and present and actually in connection with the person in relationship? Because that's where so much of the healing happens, at least for me, in the way I work and the way I've worked with the people who've been, holding space for me.
And this is very, very beautifully put, like the way you just explained it. And I remember my first organized jobs was, I was a kindergarten teacher for 3 years when I was between the ages of 19 and 21. I was a kindergarten teacher. And oh my God, the first 6 months, I wanted to jump off a bridge, or it was so hard. It was so horrendously hard. Nobody had prepared me for that. I had been tutoring children since I was 15. But it was so horrendously hard. And then halfway through it, a few months in, I found out that what I had to do in order for that to work. And back then, I was a complete tomboy. Like, you see me now wearing all fluff and flowy things, but I was complete tomboy for the first 20 some years of my life. So back then, I had this backpack that I would take everywhere. Now I have my travel backpack. That has a name, by the way. But I had this backpack, and I remember it, when I was coming into the kindergarten space, in the yard, and I remember I would open the gate, and as I was taking my backpack off, I was taking off all of who I was outside of the work with the children. Because in any other circumstance, they would have completely eaten me up alive. And I had to physically, so I remember consciously learning how to, when I was putting that backpack down, I was putting aside all of who I am, with all my pain, all my trauma, all the way I woke up that morning.
Yeah.
If I had a fight with my boyfriend, if that was down with that backpack. And then I remember when I would leave the kindergarten and leave the gate and open the gate to go out, as I was putting my backpack on, I became again me with my worldly problems and with and this was one of the biggest teachings that I've gotten, not from a human being, just how to do that. And this like, this is how I have been doing things ever since. You know, in the work, and especially it has served me so well, and it is serving me so well in this line of work. And that is what allows me to go into that space where it's not that I'm not there. Of course I'm there, and I'm fully there, and I'm 100% there. But as much as I can, my issues are out the door. And my opinions and my ideas and everything I think a person should be, or I think the world should be, or I think anything should be, that's outside the door. And it waits for me to go out and pick it up again, and then be a, you know, partner and a sister and a daughter and all of that. And this has been probably one of my most consistent practices, and I'm so grateful for those children and for that job and for just for everything that has taught me, because I always joke, but it's actually not a joke, that most of the things that I learned about working with people, I learned working with the children. The honesty, the rawness, the just being completely present, the leaving myself you know, getting myself out of the way so that it was about them and that they could grow and they could express. And it was such a big learning.
And it's a relief.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a relief. You have to I've learned that too. And the ministry training was a really big help in that. But that, like, you just put your stuff to the side. And for me, a huge factor in being a practitioner or having a practitioner and going and working with someone is like consistency and reliability, like someone who shows up regularly. And obviously life happens. One time I went to meet a client, and the morning I was meant to meet them, the space we were working in was like really hard to get to. Like the island I was on was flooded, and by the time, so I called her and cancelled because I couldn't get off the island, and actually that space flooded that day. So if we had went, we would have been there when it was being flooded. So it was like, you know, sometimes things need to be cancelled for good reasons. But for the most part, that people can be there regardless, you know. And for me, I actually find such relief in, okay, I've had an emotional night, I've been processing something myself, I'm moving through something, but I have a client, and I just have to put that to the side and meet them. And more often than not, I come out the other side feeling so much better myself, because I was able to get out of my own way, get out of my own processing, my own problem, my own head, and show up for somebody else. And it's so, it's like the blessing of like a path of service, is that you get to get out of your own way continually. And it's so much better than being stuck in this rut of thinking about your own problems round and round and round and round and round, you know, to just put down the backpack, go in, serve, and it ends up serving both of you.
And then the backpack will still be there. It'll still need to be dealt with. Like when you're out the door, you'll get into you again. Oh, darn.
Well, hopefully with a better mood.
Exactly.
We're like, okay.
Okay, we'll process it. Okay, let's go process away. Let's go do lifing away, you know. But it will be from a different place. And then sometimes when you do that, you can get a bit of perspective. Oh, yeah. And like that's really important for, you know, to get off our own way that the same way. You know.
I'm kind of looking at my list, and you're looking at your list, and, you know, maybe we're starting to wrap up soon-ish. It's maybe been an hour and 15. But one thing for me that came a few times there is just a practitioner who's willing to say, I don't know.
Oh God, yes.
Is great. Like,
oh my God, absolutely.
Another relief of like, oh, they don't know. Amazing. Someone who's a being a know-it-all and thinks they know everything. Like, run away.
Or really, like, I almost said somebody who pretends to know anything, but no, it would be helpful if they knew a little something about what they're doing, you know, with what they work with. But yes, you do not want the know-it-alls. And anytime somebody says, I will fix you, just turn around and not walk, just run away, sprint away. like sprint away and don't ever look back. Because like one of the things that I always say to my clients, and sometimes people come with really, really hard stories. And one of the things that I always say is, I'm not going to try to fix you. Mm-hmm. I don't want to fix you. I don't think you're broken. And let's see and I don't know. Let's explore.
Beautiful.
Let's explore. Let's see where it takes us, how it takes us. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I don't know your journey. Even though I've seen maybe tens, maybe hundreds of people who have a similar thing. Even though similar things have worked for that particular things 99% of the time, it's so important to leave that space for individuality. Mm-hmm. Because every now and again, the medicine somebody needs is going to be the complete opposite of everything that worked other times.
Yeah.
And a good practitioner will listen to that. Mm-hmm. And a good practitioner will give themselves the space to not know and to be receiving of that deeper knowing that comes through the connection. And that will in turn be able to facilitate a good, solid ground for that person to heal themselves and to go deepen into their own connection with their creator.
Yeah. And that's that was another point I wanted to highlight again, is that it's client led. Like if a practitioner isn't consistently bringing it back to you, your body, your relationship with God or creator, like your own journey, like that's the only place the work in anybody's body or being or life can happen, is in themselves. So that client led, continually giving the power back and not thinking that they know the way or can guide them, but that it's always put back to the client with a helpful question. And I feel like sometimes the best sessions are when less is more or less is done, and it's more the client kind of leading it. And then other times, people need kind of a bit of guidance or a bit of instruction or kind of support to kind of find the next step, because things get chaotic and murky and overwhelming, and someone who's walked a similar path can sometimes help, and there's guidance or a sense, and a good practitioner will know what's needed when, but it's always back to the client. And for me, I'm a bit OCD with it, but it's always consent, creating a contract with my client. Not this formal legal thing, but a conscious agreement between the two of us of a time frame of what we're going to how we're going to show up and how we're going to hold each other like this. And I would often reaffirm with people please say no, if there's something there. And I will bring it up regularly and sometimes make jokes about it, because I know how hard it can be to say no and how much of a practice that is. So I continually try to remind them and advise them and be look, if it's a no and you want to put it on the compass heap, you can tell me to back off. I keep it light while also keep reaffirming that please say no, so that my clients get more and more comfortable with really knowing what's yes and what's no, and actually telling me that. Because there's actually nothing worse for me working with someone who I feel won't actually tell me if they feel safe or not, because they don't have that capacity or can't say that. That makes me feel really uneasy and uncomfortable in a space as well, if I feel someone can't actually share with me if it's a yes or no. That would often be a deciding factor if I would work with someone or not, if I don't feel they can Actually communicate that. And equally, that's another body of work and a different thing to work on,
I've had that experience with people, and then usually in those situations I just go exactly what you were saying, with the less is more, and with just gentleness and just completely easing into the work, because again, it's not about me, and it's about them. And it is vital to, and one can really nurture, and it's really good what you were talking about, the consent, because one can really nurture this sense of, or let's put it this way, we can learn, even if it's later in life, how to say yes and how to say no. And the right practitioner will have the patience, or will refer you to a practitioner who does have the patience or the willingness, or can work in that space, you know. And it's really, really important to have that ability to say yes and to say no. And even if, because sometimes, you know, a practitioner will trigger the person who comes to them. That's part of the job description. To kind of have a lot of things projected or, you know, just thrown. It really comes with the job. It comes with the work. And that to be able to hold that and to say, okay, if this is what you're, you know, it's okay.
I'll be the bad guy today.
I'll be the bad guy today, or I'll just completely feck off, you know, if that's what it needs to be. And it's okay. And to just go, oof, ouch, that hurt. You know, in that way. But it's really important that everything is client-led, and that, because most of the time, and especially when we talk about trauma, and when we talk about really hard experiences and life experiences, then one of the things that has happened is that the person has lost the control over their life. They have lost the control sometimes over their bodies or over a lot of things. They have basically lost control. So then a good practitioner will give them back that control, or will work with them in such a way that they are comfortable with taking back that control over their own lives. And it's going to feel uncomfortable in the beginning. It's going to feel so weird. But then, you know, little by little, they get that control back. And then, you know, the magic can happen. And it's and another thing that's very important to me, and it's maybe a good, you know, food for thought when looking for a practitioner, is when the person leaves. It's so important that when you leave a space, when you've worked with a practitioner, you leave with the sense of, I'm leaving whole. There are no strings attached. Even though I've made a commitment to work with this practitioner, I don't know, over an extended time. When I leave, I'm completely whole. And I am myself. And then I've got my power back. Because being in the space with the practitioner, or in the space with any kind of practitioner or healer or anything, for that amount of time that you're there, you're kind of giving your power, you're putting your power on the table and saying, okay, look, can we scrub it together? So that I can take it back. And then it's important that when you leave, consciously, that practitioner doesn't leave any hooks in, you know, doesn't leave anything in that can pull you back. So that every time you go back, it's a conscious, good decision out of a healthy place, where it's not about blackmail, where it won't make you feel like you failed if you don't go back, where it doesn't take you back into the little girl or the little boy who has not done their math homework right and got scolded for it. Where you don't have to, where you don't feel less of a person, where they don't make you feel like you failed them or that you failed yourself. Where there is no spiritual bypassing, where there is no, oh, you know, I am better than everybody else. Oh, don't go to such and such because, you know. So where there is no hook, where there is nothing to pull one back, and that's a clean practitioner.
That's beautiful. I can hear in what you said earlier and there, it's that vision of wholeness, of of seeing the vision, seeing the truth of someone's wholeness as the practitioner seeing that in the person, and holding that for the person or the client when they can't hold it for themselves, and that each session a client can, as best they can, come back to that sense of wholeness, which can be hard. Like if someone is in a place of, say, you're working to really low self-esteem or a lot of pain, or, you know, it can feel like, oh, I'm broken and this feels really hard and I want to be fixed, you know. That doesn't just come from practitioners saying, oh, I want to fix you, which hopefully they don't, but like people can have that own impulse in themselves to like want to be fixed. So even if you're not totally believing that, but that you do have a sense that that's the kind of wider prayer, is the remembrance of wholeness. Because it's not, we're all whole exactly the way we are, and a practitioner who can remember that about you and help you remember it and hold that, and that holds the whole thing, is lovely. It's why I love doing like spiritual counselling, because the whole process is held with the divine holding it. And for me, when I've experienced it myself and also working with clients, it helps the continuation beyond the space, especially if, like, I would often invite people to create an altar or create something at home that kind of represents the work, so that even if they're not with me, they can be aware that that work is still happening, that the work is happening, you know, and in a way, everything in life could be seen as a little message towards whatever is kind of being worked through at a certain time. And that their relationship with Creator and with God and their own process is always there, and they just dip in with me every 2 weeks or so to kind of check in and kind of go, okay, where are things at now? What are we going to have a look at? But that it's actually this remembrance of the wholeness, of how it's all happening exactly the way it needs to happen, and it's kind of this continual flow of life that's working its way through the healing process. Yeah. And I feel that when we're going to do our episode on good things for practitioners starting out or in the middle of the journey, or, you know, it would be very important to talk about those things, about all those ways we can empower, and we should empower people to do to walk their own journey with dignity. You know, with dignity and without feeling like they're broken or they're wrong or they haven't done enough. You know, like I really am so looking forward to that particular episode as well. Because I feel that it's needed. I think so too.
And, you know, it's I was listening again to our friend Ted from Marketing for Hippies the other day, and he was saying something along the lines of what do you like, don't ask yourself why you don't want to be in the spotlight when doing the work. Ask yourself, what would you do if you were the spotlight? Become the spotlight. What do you want to shine your light on? I found that so beautiful. And yes, we're going to explore that in a future episode.
Yeah, beautiful. And another thing that we're going to explore that we kind of touched on earlier when we were talking about this episode, but we didn't really go there, is just this sense of like that deeper understanding of listening to our bodies and the yes and the no, and how much trauma and abuse can cut us off from that. So kind of like what goes wrong when spiritual abuse or, you know, traumatic upbringings or just this continual disconnection and disassociation from our bodies. Like, how do we actually begin the work of repairing that as we're in then also the space of looking for practitioners or trying to find our next right step, but having this deep fragmentation. And that also connects very much to like like the people who've been in cults or highly religious controlling
environments.
I
feel that this deserves a separate episode, and we were talking, we're gonna do an episode on spiritual hygiene that I find is really, you know, like kind of like the ABC of, and I feel that this particular subject like really deserves a time for itself and all our energy, and we're going to be coming back soon with that.
Definitely.
So yes, I think this concludes the 3rd episode of Welcome to the Mystery.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us, and please do send us your feedback, and please do send us any kind of things you would like us to cover or bounce off ideas on us. And we just want to be here for you, so please do communicate with us.
Also open to funny memes, just saying. Funny memes and reels, like, please send those too.
Funny memes are highly appreciated in a world that is always available for more funny memes.
Yes, always. Thank you for joining another episode of Welcome to the Mystery. If you like what you've heard and you would like to hear more and sit with us, you can find more of our work through the link tree linked below. This has access to our free community gatherings as well as our private one-to-one spaces and wider ceremony work. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to speak and share our thoughts with you today. Thank you for bringing your heart to the space, and we hope to connect with you again soon. 𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒍𝒐𝒏𝒔.